The text arrived at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that started like any other Tuesday in my perfectly ordinary life. I was debugging code for a client's server migration when my phone buzzed against the desk. "I shredded your passport. You're too obsessed with work travel. Now you're staying home. Clara." I stared at the screen, reading it 3 times before the words sank in. My flight to Miami left in 6 hours. My brother's wedding was tomorrow morning. The passport I'd renewed just last month was apparently confetti in our kitchen trash can. "Well," I said to my empty office, "guess I'm about to become a ghost with a new identity." 20 minutes later, I stood in our kitchen, staring at the remains of my official government documents scattered like blue and gold snow across yesterday's coffee grounds. Clara had been thorough. She'd even shredded the emergency contact card I kept in the passport sleeve. The house felt different somehow, colder, like someone had opened all the windows and let winter in, even though it was June in Massachusetts. I grabbed the pieces, photographed them, and headed for the door. The emergency passport office in downtown Boston was a bureaucratic nightmare wrapped in fluorescent lighting and desperation. The line stretched around the block with people clutching plane tickets and sob stories. I had both. "Next," called the woman behind bulletproof glass, who looked like she'd been processing human misery since the Carter administration. "My wife destroyed my passport," I said, sliding the photos and my driver's license through the slot. "I have a flight in 4 hours." She looked at me over her reading glasses. "Domestic dispute?" "Something like that." "Expedited processing is $300. Cash only." I pulled out my wallet. "Done." While I waited, I called my brother Tommy. "Hey, slight delay. Clara decided to redecorate my passport with a paper shredder." "Jesus, Mike, what did you do?" "Apparently I travel too much for work." "You're an IT consultant. Travel is literally your job. Try explaining that to my wife." The passport arrived in my hands at 5:30 p.m. I had 45 minutes to get to Logan Airport. I left Clara a note on the kitchen counter. "Thanks for the freedom lesson. Enjoy yours while I'm gone. See you in 2 weeks. Your obsessed husband." I made my flight with minutes to spare. Settling into my seat, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. No Clara demanding to know my schedule, no arguments about client calls during dinner, no lectures about my priorities. I was scrolling through emails when I spotted them on the departure gate monitor. Gate B12 had a bar with a clear view of the terminal. Clara sat at a high-top table, laughing at something the man across from her was saying. His hand rested on her thigh like it belonged there. I recognized him immediately. Brian Mitchell, junior partner at Clara's law firm. Slick hair, expensive suit, and the kind of smile that sold insurance to widows. I'd met him at the firm's Christmas party. He'd spent the entire evening explaining why my IT work was basically obsolete, thanks to artificial intelligence. Now he was buying my wife drinks while I flew to my brother's wedding alone. I took photos with my phone's zoom. Clara threw her head back, laughing at something Brian whispered in her ear. His hand moved higher on her leg. She didn't stop him. The plane taxied down the runway, and I watched my marriage disappear behind the clouds. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Miami Beach in June felt like stepping into a sauna wearing a wool coat. Tommy met me at baggage claim, took one look at my face, and steered me straight to the hotel bar. "Talk," he said, ordering 2 whiskeys. I showed him the photos from the airport. "Holy hell, Mike! How long has this been going on?" "Good question." I knocked back the whiskey. "Clara's been working late a lot. Weekend conferences, emergency client meetings." "All with Pretty Boy?" "Starting to look that way." The hotel bar was crowded with wedding guests and tourists. At the far end, a woman in a sharp business suit was reviewing documents while nursing a martini. She looked up as Tommy flagged the bartender for another round. "Excuse me," she said, approaching our table. "I couldn't help overhearing. I'm Rebecca Martinez, family law attorney, here for the Morrison wedding tomorrow. Tommy Morrison, my brother said, shaking her hand. This is my brother Mike. He's having some marriage troubles. Rebecca sat down, uninvited. The photos you showed your brother. How recent? 3 hours ago. And your wife destroyed your passport to prevent you from traveling? Shredded it. I have the pieces. Rebecca smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. Destruction of government documents, deliberate interference with travel, and now evidence of adultery. Your wife just handed you a very strong legal position. She slid her business card across the table. Call me when you get back to Boston. I have colleagues there who specialize in cases like yours. The next morning, Tommy married his college sweetheart on a beach that looked like a postcard. I stood beside him as his best man, watching two people promise to love and honor each other, and tried not to think about my own wedding vows. During the reception, my phone buzzed with a text from Linda, Clara's best friend and enabler. Clara says you're being dramatic about the passport thing. She's just trying to help you focus on what matters. I showed the message to Rebecca, who was seated at my table. Document everything, she said. Every text, every call, every conversation. Your wife is building a narrative where she's the victim and you're the problem. Don't let her control the story. That evening, I walked along the beach and called a private investigator Rebecca had recommended. His name was Pete Kowalski, and he had 30 years of experience catching cheating spouses. I need to know everything, I told him. How long it's been going on, where they meet, what they're planning. Standard surveillance package is $1,500 for 2 weeks, Pete said. But based on what you've told me, I think we can wrap this up faster. Cheaters are creatures of habit. I authorized the payment and hung up. The ocean stretched endlessly before me, dark and full of possibilities. I returned to Boston on a Thursday morning to find our house exactly as I'd left it. Clara had cleaned up the passport pieces but hadn't bothered to vacuum the kitchen. She was already at work when I arrived, which was perfect. Pete called at noon. Your wife and her boyfriend have a routine. Tuesday and Thursday lunches at the Marriott downtown. Wednesday evenings at his apartment on Beacon Hill. Friday, happy hour at Murphy's Pub near her office. How do you know all this already? I told you, cheaters are predictable. Plus, your wife posted their lunch location on social media yesterday. She tagged him in the photo. I pulled up Clara's Instagram. There it was, a picture of 2 martini glasses with the caption, "Celebrating small victories with colleagues." Brian's username was tagged, and he'd commented with a fire emoji. She's documenting her own affair, I said. Happens more than you'd think. People get careless when they think they're in control. Pete sent me a folder of photos and videos. Clara and Brian holding hands outside the Marriott. Brian's hand on Clara's back as they entered his apartment building. Clara leaving his place at midnight on Wednesday, looking thoroughly satisfied with herself. The evidence was overwhelming and damning. It was also exactly what I needed. I called Rebecca's colleague in Boston, a sharp-eyed attorney named Janet Walsh, who specialized in divorce cases involving professional misconduct. Your wife is a lawyer, Janet said during our consultation. Adultery is one thing, but if she's been using firm resources to conduct this affair, meeting rooms, company credit cards, billing personal time to clients, that's an ethics violation. The Massachusetts Bar Association takes that very seriously. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we document everything and present your wife with a choice. A quiet, fair divorce settlement or a very public ethics investigation that could end her career. I liked Janet immediately. That evening, Clara came home late with takeout Chinese food and a guilty smile. How was the wedding? She asked, unpacking containers on the kitchen counter. Beautiful. Tommy and Lisa looked happy. Good for them. She handed me chopsticks. I'm sorry about the passport thing. I was just frustrated about how much you've been traveling. Frustrated enough to commit a federal crime? Clara's chopsticks stopped halfway to her mouth. What? Destroying government documents is a felony, Clara. I looked it up. Don't be ridiculous, it was just a passport. Just a passport that cost me $300 to replace on emergency processing. She set down her food. You're being dramatic. Am I? Or am I finally paying attention? Clara studied my face, looking for cracks in my composure. She wouldn't find any. The old Mike might have apologized for making her uncomfortable. The new Mike had photos of her climbing into another man's car. I don't know what you're implying, she said finally. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. You destroyed my property, interfered with my travel, and lied about your reasons. My reasons? If you were really concerned about my work schedule, you would have talked to me. Instead, you decided to control me. Clara's face flushed red. Control you? Mike, you're gone 3 days a week. When you're home, you're on your laptop or your phone. When was the last time we had a real conversation? When was the last time you wanted one? She stared at me for a long moment, then grabbed her purse. I'm staying at Linda's tonight. We can discuss this when you're ready to be reasonable. The front door slammed behind her, rattling the windows. I finished my Chinese food in peaceful silence and reviewed Pete's surveillance photos. Clara wasn't going to Linda's house. She was going to Brian's apartment on Beacon Hill, where she'd spend the night planning her next move in our marriage chess game. Too bad for her. I was already 3 moves ahead. Friday morning brought rain and a text from Clara. Ready to talk like adults? I responded, absolutely. Murphy's Pub, 6 p.m. She agreed, probably thinking she'd chosen neutral ground. She didn't know Pete had been watching Murphy's all week, documenting her happy hour meetings with Brian. I arrived early and chose a table with a clear view of the entrance. Pete sat at the bar, nursing a beer and pretending to watch the Red Sox game. At exactly 6 p.m., Clara walked in wearing her best power suit and her most confident smile. You look good, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Miami agreed with you. Thanks, you look tired. Work has been intense lately. Big case coming up. The Morrison Industries merger? Clara's eyes sharpened. How do you know about that? I do IT work for half the law firms in Boston, Clara. Word gets around. She relaxed slightly. Right, of course. I signaled the waitress for 2 drinks. Clara ordered her usual martini. I stuck with beer. So, Clara said, settling back in her chair. About the passport situation. What about it? I think we both overreacted. You were stressed about the wedding. I was frustrated about our communication issues. Maybe we should consider couples counseling. Interesting timing for that suggestion. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table between us. The screen showed a photo of Clara and Brian entering this same pub 3 days ago. Clara went very still. I said, it's interesting that you want to work on our marriage the same week I have photos of you with Brian Mitchell. Mike, I can explain. Please do. Clara glanced around the pub, checking for familiar faces. Brian is a colleague. We've been working together on the Morrison case. Is that what you call it? We're friends, that's all. I swiped to the next photo, Brian's hand on Clara's thigh at the airport bar. Friendly. Another swipe. Clara leaving Brian's apartment building at midnight. Very friendly. Clara's face had gone pale. You had me followed? I had my marriage investigated. Turns out there wasn't much of it left to investigate. This is insane, Mike. You're acting like some kind of stalker. I'm acting like a husband who discovered his wife is having an affair. The word hung between us like a loaded weapon. Clara opened her mouth, closed it, then tried a different approach. Okay, yes, Brian and I have gotten close, but it's not what you think. What do I think? You think we're having an affair. Are you? Clara hesitated for exactly 2 seconds too long. No. I showed her the final photo, Clara and Brian kissing in the parking garage outside her office building. This was taken yesterday, I said, while I was unpacking from my brother's wedding. Clara stared at the photo like it might disappear if she concentrated hard enough. When she looked up, her confident mask had cracked completely. "Mike, please, let me explain." "I'm listening." "Brian and we connected over work. You're never around, and when you are, you're distracted. I was lonely. So you decided to shred my passport and start sleeping with your colleague. I didn't plan for this to happen, but it did happen." "Yes." The admission hung in the air between us. Clara reached across the table for my hand, but I pulled it back. "What do you want, Mike? Do you want me to end things with Brian?" "I want you to move out." Clara's eyes widened. "Move out? Mike, we can work through this. Couples survive affairs all the time." "Not this couple." I stood up and dropped a 20 on the table. "I've already filed for divorce. You'll receive the papers on Monday." "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." Clara grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. "Mike, wait. Please. I love you." "No, you don't. You love the idea of controlling me. But that game is over." I walked out of Murphy's pub and didn't look back. Pete followed a few minutes later, texting me updates as Clara sat alone at our table, staring at her untouched martini. The divorce papers hit Clara like a freight train on Monday morning. Janet had crafted them beautifully, documenting every piece of evidence and requesting an equitable division of assets based on Clara's adultery and financial misconduct. Clara called me 17 times that day. I answered on the 18th call. "Mike, we need to talk." "Talk to my attorney." "I'm not talking to Janet Walsh. I'm talking to my husband." "Soon-to-be ex-husband." "Mike, please. I made a mistake. I'll end things with Brian. We can start over." "It's too late for that." "It's not too late. We have 8 years together. That has to count for something." "It did count for something. Right up until you decided to throw it away." Clara's voice cracked. "I was confused. You're always working, always traveling. I felt like I was married to a ghost." "So you found a more attentive ghost. That's not fair." "Fair? You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about the joint credit card you've been using to pay for hotel rooms with Brian, or the vacation days you charged to the Morrison case while you were actually in Vermont with him last month." Silence on the other end of the line. "How do you know about Vermont?" "I know about everything, Clara. The question is, how much does your boss know?" "You wouldn't." "I already did. I sent a detailed report to the ethics committee this morning. Misuse of client billing, personal use of firm credit cards, and conducting an affair with a junior partner while working on a major case. The Massachusetts Bar Association is very interested in your professional conduct." "Mike, you're destroying my career. I'm documenting the choices you made. Please, I'll do anything. I'll give you whatever you want in the divorce. I want what I'm entitled to. Half of everything we built together and my freedom from this marriage. And if I agree to that, then maybe I'll consider withdrawing the ethics complaint." Clara was quiet for a long moment. "You've changed." "You're right. I have. The Mike I married would never do something this calculated. The Mike you married would never have needed to." I hung up and poured myself a whiskey. Outside, Boston glittered in the evening light, full of possibilities I'd forgotten existed. My phone buzzed with a text from Pete. "Brian Mitchell just got served with divorce papers. Turns out his wife hired her own investigator 3 months ago. She's taking him for everything." I smiled and raised my glass to the window. Sometimes the universe has a sense of justice after all. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. Clara signed everything Janet put in front of her, desperate to minimize the professional damage from the ethics investigation. She kept her job, but lost her chance at partnership. Brian wasn't so lucky. His wife's attorney made sure his affair became public record, and the firm quietly asked him to resign. I sold the house and bought a smaller place closer to downtown. No more suburban prison, no more walking on eggshells around Clara's moods, no more pretending our marriage was something it wasn't. On my first night in the new apartment, I opened a bottle of champagne and called my brother. "How does it feel?" Tommy asked. like I can breathe again. Any regrets? I looked around my empty apartment, thinking about Clara and Brian and the wreckage of their carefully planned deception. Just one, I said. I regret not doing this sooner.